David, we just received prepared remarks that Mark Zuckerberg will be making tomorrow. He touts being an American company. He touts U.S. law and the ability to innovate under that law. He also highlights China. And of course, Facebook has made the argument in the past that breaking up or regulating U.S. tech companies in the wrong way could give China an advantage over the United States. What do you make of what Zuckerberg is planning to tell lawmakers tomorrow?
Well, the thing he says in the statements that were released that I most agree with is that some kind of regulation is necessary. And I think, he's a little bit standing apart from the other leaders in saying that as firmly and as repeatedly as he has. And unfortunately, his own behavior keeps making it obvious how much that regulation is needed, because on a number of the issues, including electoral interference and hate speech, he just hasn't really gotten to where he needs to be. And, he says in his testimony also, apparently, we have more work to do, which is something that Facebook always says, and it is consummately true, but it isn't particularly helpful. Why don't they do the work? They have vast resources, an enormous amount of cash, and even in this economy, they're thriving. So let's see some action that hasn't yet happened. They've done a lot. They just haven't done enough.
In that interview with Scott Galloway, professor at NYU, he made a comment where he said the only person that would lose here is the CEO, who would be just the CEO of one of the 7 realms and not of all of Westeros if some kind of regulation were to happen. How much do you believe this is about power versus principle?
You mean the Congress trying to just exert power over these companies?
Or the companies running themselves the way they do? Well,
obviously, there's something so fundamentally true about some of the things Representative Johnson was saying to you earlier. These companies, the scale of influence they have over our lives is fundamentally wrong. However, the problem is that they do a lot of things for us that we like. And I also thought it was very interesting the way he talked about these hearings as something of an education for the American people, because ultimately that is what is needed. Look, many of the services of all 4 of these companies are deeply appreciated and even beloved by a large number of Americans. So that is not going to change. On the other hand, they do cause genuine harms, and that needs to be examined more carefully, more methodically. And I applaud the committee over the last year for having really delved into a number of the areas where problems still exist. And there is no simple solution. Breakup is not going to be the solution, by the way.
Now, the CEOs are going to be testifying virtually. They're all 4 also testifying together. Will there be safety in numbers here and less of a chance of fireworks or some sort of public reckoning?
Yeah, I mean, it has a little bit of the feeling of a show trial, but for the 4 of them, there is definite safety in numbers, because in reality, each company represents completely different issues. There are overlapping issues, as Representative Johnson did mention, being platforms, sometimes suppressing competition in more and more cases. But there are so many different issues that the committee will simply not have time to delve into. So I think one of the reasons Tim Cook agreed very belatedly to join this was because he realized he couldn't really get that much pressure, because there simply won't be the ability to focus on any given company's issues.
Quickly, do you believe Apple stands out in some way from the rest? I mean, the case has been made that perhaps Apple is the lowest on the list in terms of egregiousness on anti-competitiveness.
Absolutely. I mean, they are harder to define as a monopolist, that's for sure. I mean, Amazon is not really a monopolist by most conventional definitions either, although Lina Khan, who's the chief counsel for the majority on this committee, has come up with some interesting arguments why they should still be considered subject to antitrust enforcement. But yeah, Apple doesn't really cause as much agita to experts like myself, to the general public, to politicians. I mean, and Tim Cook is a brilliant politician, as has been noted in some of the articles leading up to these hearings. He's been able to maintain a good relationship with the Chinese government, and Donald Trump. That's a masterful stroke of politicking.
That said, you have the CEO of Epic Games, who we spoke to earlier on the show, who disagrees, the CEO of Spotify as well. We will be watching the hearing tomorrow, and across all of it, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for watching this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Do not miss our continuing coverage of that hearing tomorrow, and our special coverage right here on Beat Tech. Bloomberg Daybreak Australia is next. This is Bloomberg.